In the last stream, we were working on completing the Industrial Revolution questline, setting up our first blaze burner, our first set of crushing wheels, which we made with our wall of mechanical crafters, and we combined all of that together to make our first set of precision mechanisms, which we have right now in our inventory, and in doing so, we unlocked the Industrial Renaissance questline. The first quest in here is to make an alternator. This alternator here is going to allow us to convert our kinetic stress energy that we're generating from Create into redstone flux, the power source that's used by most other mods in modded Minecraft. Specifically for us, it's going to be used initially to power these immersive engineering machines and then potentially some thermal expansion machines as well later on down the line. To make this, we do once again have to use our wall of mechanical crafters. It's made with 6 iron plates, 1 andesite alloy, 3 copper spools, 1 iron rod, and 1 capacitor. Most of these things are fairly straightforward. The iron sheets we've made before, the andesite alloy we already have. The things we don't have are the copper spool, the iron rod, and the capacitor. Now, the capacitor here is fairly straightforward, and this does actually require the precision mechanism that we made in the last episode. To make it, we have to use our deployer to deploy an electron tube onto a precision mechanism. The electron tube, again, fairly straightforward, and thankfully we did make 1 extra polished rose quartz in the last episode, so we just need 1 more iron plate. We might as well go ahead and get 7 iron plates here, because we do also need 6 more in order to make the alternator. And I think what I'll do, whilst we wait for these 7 iron plates to be produced, I'm going to take some of the iron that we have over here, and I'm going to quickly whip up some more iron ingots over here, just so that we're not completely out of iron right away at the start of this episode. Shift K, as always, gets us another stack of iron. This is something that I want to look at automating sooner rather than later, because I don't think it should be too difficult for us to get all of the iron, copper, gold, and zinc out of this dank and automatically processed via this encased fan washing system. However, back up here, for now, let's go ahead and get ourselves the electron tube. Once we have that, we should be able to combine it with the precision mechanism. All we have to do, place the precision mechanism on the depot, place the electron tube into the deployer, and that should get us our first capacitors. Nice. That is going to go over on our crafting wall over here. You don't have to re-engineer the crafting wall for every single craft. This shape is different to the shape that we have here. However, because this shape fits into this shape, we can use the wall that we already have to complete this craft. We just put the capacitor here, we put our iron sheets here, 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 and here, here, here. And then, whoops, not there, there. And then we fill the remaining spots with the andesite alloy, which I believe goes right at the top. It does indeed, right about there. And then we need the 3 copper wire and the 1 iron rod. Now, both of these are going to be a little bit tricky because both of these require that we get ourselves the rolling mill. There are a few different recipes here. A few of them look like they require the immersive engineering machines. For example, if you look at the copper wire, it looks like it needs a metal press. And if you look at the iron rod from immersive engineering, it also looks like it might need the metal press. You can make this with iron, but I believe it is more efficient to do it with the rolling mill. And we do have to get the rolling mill to get the copper wire. There's no other way for us to get the copper wire without the rolling mill. And so, real quick, let's see if we can't make that happen. I think the only thing we're missing is yet more iron plates. And once we have those iron plates, boom and boom, that gets us a rolling mill. And so just like any other Create contraption, that does of course need some kind of kinetic energy, and we for now should be able to place that down. I was going to say potentially right about here. That would work, although it would also be a little bit awkward just given how high up it is. But I think given our current setup, that might be one of the best locations. So straight away, that's overstressed our network. That is fine. Let's go ahead and take away that mechanical press for the time being. And then up here, we should be able to start turning iron into iron rods. I think we just throw it at the rolling machine. We might have to throw it into the top of the rolling machine to make it work. If I do something like this, that takes the iron ingot and hopefully produces 2 iron rods. Nice. I think if we do the same thing with copper, it should take the copper ingot and produce 2 copper rods. That is not what I was after. That's because I have to put copper plates in there, not copper ingots. That makes a lot of sense. Let me throw down the mechanical press again. Let's get rid of this deployer to hopefully get things back online. And then in order to make the alternator, we do need 3 of these copper spools, which means in total, we're going to need 12 copper wire. You do get 2 copper wire per copper plate. And so that means in total here, we are going to need 6 copper plates. And not too long later, we got 1 more copper sheet and boom, 12 copper wire. Nice. And so now back up at our crafting request table here, we should be able to make this empty spool. Of course, we need yet another iron plate. Let's do a quick one of these. Fantastic. And then now, back up on the surface, we should be able to make, I believe, 16 empty spools, and we should be able to upgrade those spools with our copper wire into these copper spools. And so down here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, we do, of course, have to reconnect this back up. We turned it off before to save on getting overstressed. And then once we are overstressed again, we do now need to disconnect some things in order to bring stuff back online. I'm not quite sure how much we're going to have to disconnect. Apparently that much is correct. And just like before, we should see all of these items come together. Sometimes after you've done the first craft, you do have to apply a redstone signal to kind of reset the mechanical crafters here. A lever will do the trick. A button would also work. And once that's ready, it should start pulling all of those items together. It does start with the mechanical crafters that are empty, but because there's nothing in them, it doesn't push anything together. And it does work as expected. Nice. And so now we can put this down. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. And let's re-enable this and this. We can put this down and we can begin using it to generate power. Right here, that immediately overstresses the system, and that's been a running theme. And so what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to take a bit of a detour now away from this Industrial Renaissance questline. We do get an energy meter as a reward here. I'm not actually quite sure what the purpose of this is. It looks like it's just going to tell us the amount of RF per tick that we are generating. We'll tinker with that in the future. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of pivot back and look at upgrading our create system, because there's a few things I want to do. The first thing that I want to do is I want to upgrade our water wheels, because right now they're really just not producing enough stress units to power all of the create stuff that we want to have. I want to be able to have all of our stuff online all of the time. I don't want to have to keep moving around, taking away different shafts to make things work. And so to do that, I would like to get a steam boiler from create. In order to do that, we just need to get a create tank, this guy right here. We also need a steam engine, this guy right here. We need an unlimited source of water for that boiler. The easiest way, I think, for us to do that is going to be with the aqueous accumulator. We'll get to that in a second. And the final thing that we need is yet another blaze burner. This is going to heat up the water in the tank and allow the steam engines here to spin, producing stress units. So in order to do that, we are going to need to get another blaze burner. The blaze burner wasn't particularly difficult, but does require more blaze powder. For that, we are going to have to sift more sand. That's fairly straightforward. The fluid tank here requires some copper plates and a wooden barrel. Most of that, not too difficult. We do need yet more logs to make this work. And what I might do real quick, actually, before we even get started with this boiler, another thing that has been suggested that I do think is going to be sensible is the remote from Simple Storage Networks. There are 2 remotes here that you can make, the storage remote and the crafting remote. The crafting remote is the superior remote. The storage remote is easier to make, but it only allows you to access the items. It doesn't allow you to do any crafting. So instead of getting this interface, you just kind of get this top bit of the interface where you can pull items out from anywhere in the base, but you can't craft with them. And so you do always have to be near a crafting table in order to do any crafts. However, if we upgrade to the crafting remote, this is an upgraded version that is going to allow us to both craft with and access all of our items. It essentially gives us this storage request table, but we can use it anywhere in the base, which is ideal. Now, the downside here is that in order to get the crafting remote, we need 4 of these sea lanterns. We also need an ender chest. The ender chest, surprisingly, is the harder part here because it requires an eye of ender. That eye of ender requires an ender pearl, and I believe the way that we're going to have to go about getting an ender pearl is either killing an enderman or using this mana pool here. To do that, we can drop one gas tier into a mana pool to get an ender pearl if that mana pool has the alchemy catalyst beneath it. Right now, we do not have the alchemy catalyst available to us. If we want to get the alchemy catalyst, we need to get a mana steel, a mana powder, 2 more blaze powder, and an experience sheet. Thankfully, none of this seems too difficult. We do also need some more living rock as well, and so I will quickly do one of these to get some more living rock cooking up. Most of the other items there, though, should be fairly straightforward. The blaze powder, of course, we can get from sifting sand, and we're going to do the same to get our blaze burners as well. The mana powder is made by dropping redstone, glowstone, sugar, or gunpowder into the mana pool. Thankfully, we've got a bunch of redstone, glowstone, and ideally sugar if we wanted to, but for now, we'll just do glowstone, like so. And then we also need to get 1 mana steel. The mana steel is made by dropping iron into a mana pool with a tiny little bit of mana in it. I do think we should have enough right here. We do indeed. And then the final piece of the puzzle is just this experience sheet, which is made by pressing the nuggets of experience, which again, we are getting from our gravel setup. I do also believe, by the way, that you can consume these to get XP levels if that's something you're after. And I did notice there is a quest in the Industrial Revolutions questline to make a disenchanter, which allows you to take your XP and store it in liquid form. That might be useful for some crafts later on, but it also allows you to store your XP so that if you do die, you don't actually lose it, which could be quite useful. For now, though, down here, if we do one of these, that should get us our plate. Fantastic. And then from there, I think it's just the blaze powder that we're missing because our living rock should be done. It is indeed. And so real quick, I'm going to get a bunch of gravel. I'm going to turn it into sand. I'm going to do a bunch of sand sifting because ideally we're going to get 2 blaze powder for this alchemy catalyst as well as a further 9 blaze powder to make our second blaze burner. And a few stacks of sand sifting later, we now have the 11 blaze powder required. And so back up here, we should be able to get our blaze mesh for the next blaze burner. And we should also have everything to make the alchemy catalyst. Nice. So we do run into a bit of a problem here. And it also appears that there's a bit of a visual glitch with the Botania recipes in this pack, specifically this ender pearl recipe. It looks like it requires this much mana. And usually the way this works, as I mentioned in a previous stream, is that this bar usually refers to the diluted mana pool. And so in theory, we should need 1/4 of a diluted mana pool to make this work. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case in this pack. If I try and drop the gas tier into a diluted mana pool with this much mana in it, it doesn't work. In fact, if I try and drop a gas tier into a full diluted mana pool, it also doesn't work. That would lead you to believe that this is the bar for a full mana pool, not a diluted mana pool, but that's also not the case. We don't need 1/4 of a full mana pool to make the ender pearl. So I'm not quite sure what this bar is referring to. I think it's just some kind of visual glitch / bug, but that does mean that for the time being, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw down this right here. I'm going to grab our full mana pool, aka not the diluted mana pool, put that down right about there, and then what we'll do is we'll move this mana spreader to here, like this. We'll throw down our ender flame again, and then we'll grab some coal, drop that down like so. I will give this a quick tap with our temporal pouch to make it just that little bit faster. We do also want to make sure that's all connected up, which it is. Fantastic. Let's make that 64x. We've still got 3 hours and 4 minutes in our system there, and hopefully soon that will have enough mana in it to complete this craft. Of course, to do this, we do need to get a gas tier. The gas tier here is made by dropping an iron nugget into a mana pool that's above a blaze mesh. Thankfully, we should have iron nuggets in the system. We do indeed. And we also have a mana pool here that's above a blaze mesh. Nice. And then back over here, look at that. This is how much mana it takes in this pool to make this happen. Nice. And so now all we need to do to turn that into an ender chest is get 8 obsidian. We do, of course, also have to craft it with a blaze powder to get an eye of ender. Hopefully we can get another blaze powder fairly easily from some sand sifting. To get the obsidian here, we do have a couple of options. One of the easiest ways might be with the fluid barrel here. You can turn 1 lava and 1 water bucket into 1 obsidian. How much do we have here? We've got 11 buckets of obsidian, and so actually, if we grab our bucket, the way this works is the lava gets consumed, but the water doesn't. This does have to be done in a stone barrel. It does look like it can be done in a wooden barrel here, but you can't put lava into a wooden barrel, as we saw in the last episode. Essentially, though, what we can do is we can put water above this barrel, like this, and then if we put lava into the barrel, which we're going to have to do by breaking one of these, like this, that's going to immediately turn that lava into obsidian. Nice. We just need to do that 8 times. And once we have 8 obsidian, we should then be able to craft up this ender chest, of course, as soon as we get 1 more blaze powder. And there we go, 1 more blaze powder later. That should be everything for the ender chest. Now, in order to actually make the remote, the last thing that we need here is, well, another storage network route. That should be easy enough. We just need to craft up 1 more block of gold. We'll do 3 in total because we also need 2 more to actually make the remote. And we also need some network cable, which thankfully we do have in our system. Boom and boom. And so now it's just the sea lanterns. We need 4 of these sea lanterns. And to get these, we need prismarine shards and prismarine crystals. Thankfully, these are both makeable by bulk haunting lapis. It's not guaranteed. There's a 75% to get prismarine shards and a 12% chance to get prismarine crystals, but we do have a fair amount of lapis. We actually have more lapis than almost anything else in our system here. And so if we once again grab our flint and steel and head down to our bulk haunting setup, of course, making sure to eat as we go because we are very low on food. We should definitely look at getting a better source of food sooner rather than later. But here, if we do one of these and one of these, we can then of course do one of these, and hopefully that's going to very quickly get us a large amount of prismarine shards and prismarine crystals. It looks like we're probably going to want to get a couple of stacks of lapis here, because I don't think that the 1 stack that we got there is going to be enough. Let's quickly see if we can't get back down before our accelerating effect runs out, and let's also try and do a second and maybe even a 3rd stack. Never mind, we are completely out of lapis, although I think this actually might be enough. Let's give it a try. Up here, can I make 4 of these? 1, 2, 3, 4, can. Nice. And so that, chat, is everything for the crafting remote. And with this, we just right-click on the storage network route, and now, no matter where we are in the base, we can just right-click on this remote, and it will open up the exact same interface that we normally have to come all the way up to the storage request table to get. And so now with this, we should be able to spend a bit more time kind of down here doing our crafts without having to worry about heading back up to the surface every time we need 1 extra copper sheet or 1 extra copper rod or 1 extra copper wire or whatever it is that we need. And so let's take a look now at getting this blaze burner. So right away, this is going to come in useful. To do that, we need 4 more iron plates, which we can now just take from our system and drop on to the depot under our mechanical press. Once that's done, we should be able to make our blaze burner. For that, actually, we are going to need to get another netherrack. The netherrack, as we saw before, is just lava and water in here. So let's take yet another bucket of lava, throw that in like so. One thing we could do is we could throw a few more stacks of cobblestone into here to start replenishing the lava that we just took out of this tank, so it's there when we need it. And then 1 redstone in this barrel with the lava gets us our netherrack. We can do a quick slash back to head downstairs. That gets us our iron sheets. 1, 2, 3, 4. With the netherrack gets us an empty blaze burner. And then just like before, we can place that down on the depot with the blaze mesh up in the deployer. And as soon as we reconnect that back up, that should get us our blaze burner. Nice. So the way this works is we take our blaze burner and we place it underneath a set of fluid tanks. You do need more than 1 fluid tank. The minimum number of fluid tanks, I believe, is 4. We're probably going to go for 9 fluid tanks, just because that's going to allow us to put down a 3x3 boiler, which is going to be easier to center in our base than a 2x2 boiler. And once we have the 9 barrels, we can craft that with the copper sheets, and we get 9 fluid tanks. So the basic premise here is that we place down our blaze burner. Again, this is not going to be the final place, but to show it off, we'll do something like this, and as soon as you put down a minimum of 4 fluid tanks next to each other like this, they form into this boiler setup. You can also do the same with 9 like this, and they form into an even bigger boiler setup. And then in order for this to work, it needs a few things. It needs water, which you cannot put in manually. By the looks of it, you do have to pipe that in. That's fine. We also, as mentioned before, do need to get 1 of these steam engines. These, super easy to make. It's a block of copper with 1 gold plate and 1 andesite alloy. We, of course, are just missing the gold plate here. And so if we do a quick slash back and do 1 of those, that's going to get us our gold plate, which is everything we need for our first steam engine. The steam engines here go on the side of the boiler, like this. You can put them on any side of the boiler, in any slot, and you'll see here we now have a boiler gauge, and at the top, we now have some boiler stats. Specifically, the size, the water capacity, the heat capacity, the water input rate, and eventually it's going to show us the kinetic stress units produced as well. We do have to throw down a shaft. You can either throw this down horizontally or vertically. It works either way, so you can have it pointing up or pointing sideways. But now all we need to do is get water into here, and this is going to begin producing power. To do that, as mentioned earlier, we need the aqueous accumulator. This requires more copper than we have, but we should have more downstairs that we can produce. We also need another bucket, that's easy enough. And we also need 1 redstone servo. This is 2 iron and 1 redstone, boom, and boom. We're now just missing that copper. That is completely fine. If we head downstairs, we should be able to take another stack of copper out of here, quickly wash that over here. And then from there, we can go ahead and compress those down, of course, and that gets us yet another stack of copper. Nice. So now, if we head back to our remote, that should be everything for the aqueous accumulator. It is indeed. And the way this works, if we go back up to our boiler, is you place this down between 2 water source blocks. So for example, right about here, this will now generate unlimited water. It's super useful because it means that we can take our fluid pipe and we can extract from this aqueous accumulator. We do not want to send into here, so I'm going to disconnect that, but we can now extract from this and send it around into the boiler. If we set this to extract, this is going to begin filling up with water, and over here you'll see this steam engine begins to rotate. Right now it's producing 2048 stress units, but that is without any fuel being given to our blaze burner. If we want to get even more stress units, we can give this power, but just as a point of reference, downstairs, 2048 stress units is equivalent to 4 water wheels, and this takes up substantially less space than those 4 water wheels. However, if we go ahead and give this guy some fuel, like so, this octuples the power production from 2,000 all the way up to 16,384 stress units. Downstairs, we're producing about 2,500, so already this setup produces about 8 times more power than our setup downstairs. We can go further. You can put another steam engine on here and you can make it taller. I think if you want to get another 16,000, you have to add another steam engine, you have to add another blaze burner, and I believe you might have to add a second layer to the boiler, although I'm not actually quite sure if that second layer is required for one more, but you can add really as many of these as you like. The more you add, the more you get. If you put a second one of these on without upgrading the number of blaze burners or the number of fluid tanks, it will spin, but it will spin at half of the speed. And so we could put down another steam engine on the other side, for example, and that would produce 8,192, and this one here would also produce 8,192. So it would half the stress units between those 2 steam engines. And so that does make it easy to set up things like our system downstairs, because instead of having to have this kind of convoluted setup at the top that splits the shaft power in 2, you can do that by default by just putting 2 steam engines onto 1 boiler. And so what I think I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and kind of tear down this water wheel setup in the middle, including all of the cogwheels above it. I'm going to move the boiler into this system, and then we'll look from there at automating the system so that it always has fuel, and we can use all of those kinetic stress units around our base. Alright, so not too long later, and we now have the boiler here set up inside of the center pillar where our water wheels used to be. You can put the steam engines directly on top of the boiler like this, which is perfect for us because it means we don't have to worry about moving any of the glass here, which is good. And so now there are a couple of things to do. The first is that we have to rotate this to get it up into this system. The second, though, is that we can kind of get rid of this system, because now that we have access to these precision mechanisms, we can use these to make a rotational speed controller. This is essentially all of this, but in one block. It allows us to specifically set the speed that we want our system to rotate at without having to go through the whole rigmarole of getting big cogwheels and small cogwheels and fine-tuning each and every one of them in just the right place to make sure that we get just the right speed that we want for the stress units that we're producing. Ideally here, what we can do is we can just craft a precision mechanism with a brass casing. The brass casing is going to require 1 brass and then at least 1 log, which of course we don't have down here. We're going to have to go back up and steal 1 out of here. Give that a quick strip, right-click it with some brass, and boom, and that should be everything for the rotational speed controller. To make this work, we do need a big cogwheel. Thankfully, we've got a ton of them in here that we're not going to be using momentarily. And so if I were to steal one of these, what we can do here is we can place the rotational speed controller in line with the power coming out of our steam engine. And then from there, what we can do is we can place a large cogwheel here, and what we can do here is we can change the speed at which this rotates using this interface. If we quickly grab our speedometer and we put that down right about here, we can see 16 RPM, which is exactly what it says here. As said, if we click and hold, that's right click and hold, it brings up this interface, and now not only can we change the direction by just moving up or down, you'll see that the bottom row here is going counterclockwise, which is currently the way that our large cogwheel is spinning. If I move that up and let go, it's going to begin spinning the other way. Already, big improvement, but we can then change the number here to just make it spin faster. If we go up to 64, it spins quicker. We can go all the way up to 256 without having to use any big cogwheels, any small cogwheels, any of that stuff. It's much more compact. Of course, the only downside to doing this is now all of the machines connected are going to use way more stress units because the speed is so much higher. But this does make life a whole heck of a lot easier, and going forward, it really shouldn't be too difficult for us to make a few of these if we do want to get multiple different speeds for different parts of the base. But ideally, given how many stress units we can get out of the boiler here, especially if we get multiple steam engines, we hopefully won't have to worry too much about stress units for too much longer. Speaking of which, if we want to get more stress units, we are going to have to automate the feeding of the blaze burner over here with fuel. There are a few ways we could do this. The first way that I was considering using was with this clicker here. This click machine allows you to automatically right click. I was just going to put some coal that we're generating from here into that click machine and have that periodically click on the blaze burner to give it fuel and keep it going. However, the Twitch chat has pointed out that we do have the Create, Craft, and Additions mod installed. This is an add-on mod for Create that, along with other things, adds the straw. This is fairly easy to make. It's one bamboo run through our rolling mill, and once we have it, it allows us to pump fluids directly into our blaze burner, essentially allowing us to use liquid fluids, like lava, for the powering of our blaze burner. And given that up here we can very easily automate the production of lava, that's going to essentially allow us to keep our blaze burner running indefinitely with almost no active work. The only tricky part about this is that we don't have any bamboo. Thankfully, we can get bamboo by sifting dirt, either using a flint mesh or a string mesh. I don't think it really matters which one we use. Thankfully, we do have 9 sieves in here, and we, of course, have 9 meshes. And so, real quick, I am going to get some more dirt, and we are going to use that to sift with. Right now, we only have 6 dirt, and people have pointed out in both the YouTube comments and the Twitch chat that there's an even easier way of getting dirt than the coarse dirt method that I was using previously, because you can, in this pack, just put gravel down around the pure daisy, and that will transform it into dirt very quickly. So we can just do this, and that's going to fairly quickly get us dirt. Look at that. And of course, we have gravel automated downstairs, and so hopefully it's not going to take us too long, and hopefully not too much sifting, to get our first bamboo. And there we go. We got 2 bamboo. We can now go ahead and once again get rid of these guys, put them back in the system for now, and we can just run this bamboo through our rolling machine. We could definitely do it some kind of ladder or something up here, or maybe just look at moving this down, but for now, we'll drop that in and try. Oh, we don't have any power. Of course we don't. Do I have my crank? I do indeed have my crank. I'm probably going to have to move this then, because if I try and crank it, it's going to try and power everything, and the crank can't power everything. So what I'm going to do temporarily is just put this down here, put the crank on like this, put the bamboo in like this, and then we'll just give this a manual. I don't have enough. I can't manually crank it. That is unfortunate. That's fine. In that case, what we're going to have to do is temporarily take the rolling machine, I think, into the belly of our system here. We're going to have to place it down like right here, and then somewhat awkwardly try and get up to get the bamboo into the rolling machine, and hopefully that should get us our first straw, which we should then be able to just right-click onto our blaze burner, transforming it. Whoops, not what I meant to do. I actually don't know if I just lost that straw because I tried to pick up my blaze burner. I didn't. Perfect. It did apply, and you'll see this guy is now ready to drink up some liquids. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to move this setup downstairs. It should destroy the campfire. That's fine. We can make another one very easily. We will take our crucible right here, and we'll, of course, take our hopper, although I don't know if we're going to use this hopper necessarily. We definitely are going to use the pipes, and we'll probably still use the tank as a buffer here because I think it is going to be useful, and I'm hopeful that we produce more lava than we use. One other thing we are going to want to do here is get another cobblestone generator. We could try and kind of tap into the pre-existing cobblestone generator that we have, but it's not very difficult to make, so I feel like we might as well just go ahead and make a second one. To do that, we just need some lava and some water, and then this time around, let's go with the higher tier cobble gen, just because it's really not that difficult to make. And then what we can do is we can take this downstairs and we should be able to kind of cram this into the space right next to our blaze burner. Now, I might end up changing this at some point in the not so distant future because we'll probably eventually end up with 9 blaze burners under here. And at that point, we'll probably end up putting all of the fluid pipes under the blaze burners to allow us to feed them all at the same time. For now, we only have the one. And so what we're going to do is we're going to place down our crucible, let's say right about here. That, of course, needs the campfire beneath it. Let me quickly see about crafting another campfire here. Boom. And boom. That's going to bring this online. From there, we do need to get cobblestone into it. Unfortunately, the cobblestone generator does push items up. It doesn't push them down. And so I think what we're going to have to do here is kind of have the cobblestone generator down like this, get potentially another drawer or another chest of some persuasion to actually push the cobblestone into. We'll go with just a regular drawer for now. That's probably the easiest way for us to do this. We can make a dark oak drawer here. And you know what? I think that's going to be fine. If we do this, and we do not that. If we do this, by the way, you can press N to turn bucket mode on and off with the basic fluid tank. If bucket mode is on, you can use this like a bucket that can hold 32 buckets. If it's off, then it just acts like a normal tank. If we do this, we can then go ahead and just use an item pipe here to extract from the cobblestone drawer round into the fired crucible. Something like this and like this. Set that to, whoops, not like that. Let's turn bucket mode off and get that off our hotbar. Let's set that to extract. And then over here, we then want to extract from the crucible down, I think ideally into this tank and then into the blaze burner. So we'll put this here. We'll disconnect that because we don't want the lava going into the boiler. We'll put the tank here like this. We will then put another pipe here, set this to extract so the lava goes into there, and then over here we can set this to extract so the lava goes straight into the blaze burner, and right away you'll see that the blaze burner begins to fill up with lava and it is going to get that boiler going. I might leave this little corner open just so that we can potentially access that lava in the future, but now it's kind of just a case of connecting this up to our pre-existing system, which should mostly just be a case of gearboxes and shafts. So real quick, I'm going to move this, I'm going to move this, I'm going to get rid of all of the cogwheels in here. We'll probably end up moving this rotation speed controller a little higher up, and we'll do some shaft rerouting to get everything back online. All right, so not too long later, we have got our steam engine going into a gearbox that goes up into our rotation speed controller. That goes into another gearbox, and then that goes up and is split in two. So now all of our machines are set up and all are going to run at the same speed. Real quick, I am going to do something like this and like this, just for the symmetry of it. I think that's going to look a little nicer from the outside than having it be a little asymmetrical. But now, over here, things are working and are spinning, albeit somewhat slowly. So we can now kind of give this a go. If we take our speedometer, the speedometer not really too useful now. We really just need the stressometer because of the fact that we can change the speed, of course, with the rotation speed controller. If we put this down, what are we currently at? We're currently using almost none. We've got 15,600 stress units remaining, and that's with almost everything connected. I think the only things not connected are our second deployer, which I think might be in my backpack. It is indeed. Let's get rid of you and let's re-put this back down. Let's also make sure, ideally, that goes down correctly. I do it wrong every time. Let's also reconnect this back up, like so. And I guess, finally, let's also make sure that this is back online as well. So now with everything connected, we still have 14,656 stress units remaining. And so we can now kind of give this a bit of a tweak. Let's go all the way up to 64 and see how that holds up. I think that's still fine. We could go even faster. I don't know if we're going to be able to quite go all the way up to 128. We totally can. Look at that. Fantastic. We don't have many stress units left, but we do still have wiggle room. And going forward, of course, now, if we actually did want to add more stuff, we could always just turn the speed down a little bit. And one of the other benefits, of course, of this rotational speed controller is the super granular speeds that you can pick. Before, we were kind of limited to only being able to use fixed amounts, 16, 32, 64, 128, and then 256. But now we could set it to 112, and it would go exactly at that speed, which means we can really fine-tune the amount of stress units that we use and really get the maximum speed for however much stress capacity we have. And so now, real quick, one thing we can do, which I've not been doing, by the way, is there is a hotkey for the crafting remote. If you go to Options, Controls, Key Bindings, and type in Remote, The network remote courier here is set to I by default. I will work. I'm going to change mine to Z just because I'm more used to that. You can also type in any key and then click key, and it will show you the conflicts, because you'll see by default this is red, which means it's a conflict. I'm going to go ahead and just unbind these. Just click and then press escape to unbind. And now, when I press Z, it opens up my crafting grid automatically. What's even better, though, is that we can go to the curio slots, which is this little button above our head, next to our head slot. And if we put our remote into the charm slot right here, I think either one will work, we can now leave it in there, therefore not having it take up a space in our inventory. But if I press Z, it still opens up the wireless crafting inventory. Pretty cool stuff. We also now do have enough stress units to actually get our alternator down. And so if I were to place this down, it would start producing power. The trouble is we're probably going to overstress straight away there. We are indeed. That's to be expected because we've cranked this so far. But if we lower it back down to, let's say, 64, this is online. It doesn't produce a lot of power, but it does use a lot of stress units. You'll see here, it's only producing 30 FE, which, by the way, is the same as 30 RF. Those are interchangeable one-to-one. But it's using 4,096 stress units, which is a little crazy. It's a lot of stress units to be using. We do still have 5,000 left, so again, we can kind of micro tweak this up just a little bit until we get to, the perfect amount. This is currently placed before the rotational speed controller, so this is using 4,096 with the default speed of the powered shaft there. It's not using the faster shaft that comes after the rotational speed controller, and so we are almost certainly going to want to look at getting more of these steam engines, getting more of these blaze burners, and really cranking up the amount of stress units that we are producing. To do that, really the only limiting factor, I think, is blaze powder, because we have a lot of copper and we can smelt a lot of copper very quickly with our washing system, and we've got a lot of lava being produced over here. I assume we've got enough lava to run quite a few of these blaze burners. It looks like that could be questionable. I think we are gaining lava, but maybe not enough to run 9 blaze burners. If we wanted to run 9, we might need to set up a little platform beneath this platform with a bunch of these crucibles to get a lot more lava being produced. Of course, cobblestone not going to be a problem. It's just a case of turning that cobblestone into lava. But yeah, the real problem is just the blaze burners. And so real quick, I think the last thing we'll do here is look at getting sand sifting automated. Essentially, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to move these crushing wheels here and here. We're going to move them around over here so that they feed into this sifter, because what we can do then is we can siphon some of the gravel from this millstone and run that gravel directly down through the crushing wheels to get sand, flint, and clay. The flint and clay we can then send directly around to the dock here. The sand, though, can go straight down into this sifter, hopefully automating for us the production of blaze powder, so that next time we can come back and hopefully massively expand our stress unit capacity. Okay, so not too long later, I've essentially moved the setup that we had here with the crushing wheels over and placed it just above the sifter. So it's a little compact here, but essentially we've got the same setup where there's the chute up there, which I will right click to give it a little window, and the chute here. So we've got the 2 chutes, we've got the crushing wheels, we've got the 2 gearboxes. Essentially what I've done is I've kind of pulled some of the create power from here. So we had this gearbox already. I've pulled that across and then down to here. We've got the 2 gearboxes, and that is now rotating these as they should be rotated. Over here we have our millstone. We're then extracting from that millstone to pull the gravel, and it will always just pull the gravel, by the way. It will never pull the cobblestone. That's going to go up and around into a new storage drawer that I've put up at the top. I'll kind of build a platform here to show you guys what I've been working on. Right here, we've got this storage drawer. That's where the gravel's going to go to. That gravel then gets pulled down by the chute into the crushing wheels. The crushing wheels turn it into sand, as well as flint and clay. Those end up in here. If we set this to extract, I'm fairly certain that only sand can go in the sifter. So I'm fairly certain that neither the flint nor the clay balls should ever end up in there, which is good. We do need to take the flint and the clay out and send that somewhere. The unfortunate thing is that it's very difficult to filter the item pipes, because to filter the item pipes, you need to have an advanced pipe upgrade, which does require diamonds, which is unfortunate. And so we're going to have to extract the flint and clay, but I think we're going to have to extract them, at least initially, into a storage drawer. Specifically, I think a 2x1 drawer would be sensible here. One of these guys. This can hold 2 items. It can hold 1,024 of each item. It's kind of a middle ground between the 1x1 drawer and the 2x2 drawers that we've made so far. This guy, on its own, not too useful, but an item we've not made so far is the drawer key, that being this guy right here. It's made with an upgrade template, which is just any drawer surrounded by sticks. That gets you 4 of them. We then need 2 gold ingots and 1 gold nugget to get the drawer key. The big benefit of the drawer key is that it allows you to lock a storage drawer to specific items. For example, up here, if I go ahead and lock this drawer, now nothing can go in there until I specify what I want to go in there. If I were to right-click on there, now that drawer is locked to gravel, and so even if it fully runs out of gravel, it's still going to display gravel, and it's still only going to be able to store gravel. Essentially, what I'm thinking here is if we go ahead and put a pipe down like this, making sure not to connect it there, like that, we can then extract from here into one of these 2x1 drawers, like this. I didn't want it up here. This one is not what I'm after. I also don't want this to connect on the other side either. I can see that cobblestone's being pumped in there. Let me disconnect that because we don't want any cobblestone in this drawer. What we want to do is right-click to lock the drawer, and then we're going to manually place in flint and clay. So now, even if we take all the clay and all the flint out, you'll see that it's still locked to flint and clay. And so now, if we were to set this pipe over here to extract, it's going to extract only the flint and clay because that's all that can go in here. And then what we can do from there is we can then go and extract it around to the dank. It's not necessary to extract it around to the dank, but the dank is just bigger. It can hold more stuff, and I do want it in the dank because the dank is accessible to the system. This is just an intermediary way of kind of whitelisting what we extract, because the sand can't go here and the sand can't sit in the pipe either. No items can. That's not how these pipes work. And so this is just a way of kind of filtering what comes out, because if we didn't have the drawer here, it would pour sand round into here as well, which is not what we want. This way, we're still able to access the flint and the clay from our remote, and so anywhere in the base, and we're also able to sift all the sand at the same time, which is perfect. This will eventually back up, like this chest here will back up if we're not sifting fast enough. That's completely fine. The crushing wheels will also back up, and everything will just kind of sit around. Nothing ends up getting spewed on the ground either, which is perfect. And so now, we should be slowly but surely passively getting blaze powder. And so hopefully next time, chat, we'll come back, we'll place down more blaze burners, we'll maybe look at increasing our lava production, and from there we can then look at expanding our create contraptions and really start putting that massive amount of stress units to use. We can also look at potentially making more alternators to get more power to start powering some of these big industrial machines from immersive engineering that we're going to have to make to complete the industrial renaissance questline, but that's a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Sky Revolutions there.